Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
When I look at the clock, I see 5:07. And when I look at the calendar, I see the final workday of the week, or as Patrice Onwuka likes to call it,
Friday. Happy Friday, everybody.
There we go. Happy Friday. It is. It is the 11th day of April. That would be 4/11. I don't know why that has some significance, but it sounds like it does. 4/11 here, last Friday before tax day. And we're already sort of mid-month here in April, which is shocking to me as time flies by. Coming up at 7:05, we're going to have the senior fellow at the Foundation for Defending Democracy's Benem Ben Taleblu. I think I did that right. His main focus is Iran. There's a lot going on with Iran and nuclear talks this weekend. At 8:05, Reagan Reese of the Daily Caller. Boy, she's like becoming a rising star there in the press briefings.
Yes, she
Right?
is.
Every single briefing, like, Reagan? Yes, Reagan. I think she just likes saying Reagan. Who doesn't like saying Reagan? Makes you happy. 8:35, Jim Hansen will be joining us. He is the president of Security Studies Group. We're going to talk about the Chi-Coms and the threats from China, and also this developing story that happened overnight that I'm sure Jim will have some opinion about. A colonel, a commander, base commander for Space Force in Greenland, Susan Myers, has been relieved of duty.
Oh, wow.
Because she sent out an email to the troops there telling her, sorry that you may have been triggered and had your feelings hurt by J.D. Vance visiting here and what he had to say, but just so you know, we don't agree with him. It's like, I'm sorry, excuse me, chain of command? Excuse me, you're a colonel? She's no longer in charge of that base now. That's sort of what happens.
It's probably a good thing.
When you openly... Yeah, probably a good thing indeed. All right, so there you go. That's what's coming up later this morning. Let's talk about the House of Representatives, where once again, I'm sorry, I got to keep beating this drum. I know that there are people who are suspicious of him. There are people who don't like him because he's not out there, thirsting for blood and ripping the Democrats' throats out, and but Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, just keeps getting it done. Maybe there's a reason why President Donald Trump leaned on some of those House Republicans and said, Johnson's my guy. Vote for Johnson. Johnson continues to deliver 2 huge votes yesterday.
Yes.
That Mike Johnson was able to shepherd in. The most significant one, well, I shouldn't say that. The most challenging one with the slimmest margin was the budget bill, the Senate budget bill. That, again, all the smart guys in town, all the conventional wisdom, all the people who know much better than this lowly talk radio host, they all said, well, there's no way he can do it. He's done. Johnson's done. They're going to have to abandon the idea of one big, beautiful reconciliation package. Chairman Jason Smith is going to have to go back to the drawing board. They're going to have to let the Senate drive this thing. They're going to Guess what? All those people were wrong again, Patrice.
They were. They've been wrong very often about a lot, right?
Often about so much. And yet they still catch those big cable news network checks for analysis. Well, their analysis was wrong. Speaker Mike Johnson emerged in the middle of the day yesterday with John Thune by his side with a big old smile on his face, saying that they had, in fact, passed. I think they had 2 votes to spare. It's tight. Everything's tight with this majority. But he emerged victorious. And I got to say, real fast, and I'll pass it over, just in terms of the politics of it, when Nancy Pelosi had like a 30-seat majority, I was told that she is the greatest politician in Washington, that she ruled with an iron fist, and she had her caucus in line, and she was an effective, and Lord knows the history books, because we don't get to write them, will say things like that. Can we just say that for the first 3 months now, of the slimmest of slim majorities for Mike Johnson, I think it's a greater feat that he's been able to get every significant vote through. He's had speed bumps. It hasn't always been pretty. It hasn't always been easy, but he's done it, and he's done it quietly and stoically, and with that Southern understatement as he just, makes sure that everybody sort of does what they need to do so he can get the W. And even better, at the end of the day, I know you want him to be out there, with fangs and blood dripping from his claws after he's eviscerated the Democrats. But at the end of the day, with the style that Mike Johnson brings to the table, Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats still walk away with a big L. And you may want that L to be bloody. You may want it to be toxic. You may want it to be a stake through the heart. I get it. But an L is an L when it comes to votes in the House of Representatives. And that's what the Democrats have. And Johnson's got the W.
Well, congratulations to Speaker Johnson. I mean, they're absolutely in order, Larry. Here, when you consider that it wasn't just about, listen, the budget bill passed by a measure of 216 to 214. Two Republicans, Representative Tom Massey from Kentucky and Victoria Spartz from Indiana, they joined with all of the Democrats in voting against the bill. But that means that the 10, 12, maybe half, close to a dozen of Republicans who were threatening not to vote for this bill just a day or two ago got on board. How did they get on board? Well, there was some sort of negotiation that Speaker Johnson and others probably in leadership had with them to give them guarantees that however these two, the budget and the Senate bills, would be reconciled. They would be reconciled in a way that even the deficit hawks wouldn't have to worry about. That is huge.
That's right.
And why? It's not just a win. It is demonstration that Republicans can govern. And unfortunately, in the past, we've seen it where voters deliver Republican leadership in the Senate or the House, sometimes both, and then they blow it. They miss the opportunity. Well, this is a huge opportunity that is extremely costly if this is blown. Like, we all know that on January 1 of next year, if these tax cuts are not extended, you are getting a tax cut increase, a tax hike. You are getting a tax hike. Small businesses are getting a tax hike. Families are getting tax hikes. Your child tax credit cut in half. Average taxpayer, 22% tax increase. I know this stuff because I'm eating it, spitting it out every day on the media, Larry. Yeah. But it is critically important that Republicans demonstrate they can govern. The midterms, yes, they are over a year away. But if they miss that opportunity now, they may not have another bite at the apple later this year, or heaven forbid next year, when it becomes very difficult to pass major historic legislation like a tax cut.
Yeah.
So good to.
So
good
what
for
did
Speaker
you're
Johnson.
You're absolutely right, and it is good for the rest of us. And let's not forget, it was Paul Ryan who engineered the last big tax bill in the first year of Trump's term. It was December of 2017 when it was passed.
Yes.
And you're right to point out that it all had a sunset on it. I mean, again,
yes.
Easy to get people to vote for something when you know that, 6 years later, it's going to sunset. Now it's up to Speaker Johnson with a much narrower majority to have to make them permanent. And again, Chairman Smith and Ways and Means sort of engineering the tax bill here. And yes, very important headline, that the way they got those votes, the way they got Chip Roy on board, the way they got Andy Harris on board and the rest of the Freedom Caucus was a commitment to $1.5 trillion in cuts. That's pretty big.
That's significant.
And now they have to deliver. There's more work to be done, but every single hurdle they have, he clears the hurdle. In a moment, you'll hear what Johnson had to say about it. You also hear Hakeem Jeffries, this odious, weak man who I don't think is going. I know everyone says, "Oh, he's going to be our first black speaker." When the Democrats, I don't know if he's going to last that long. Not if he keeps racking up these losses. And you'll hear how he described what happened yesterday in the House. It's pretty sick and sad. You'll hear that next. And also another huge victory having to do with securing elections in this country. And yes, some Democrats voted with Republicans on that. We'll get to that in a moment, too. But first, it's 5:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
It's a good day in the House. I told you not to doubt us. The media always does. The Democrats always do. But we get the job done, and we're really grateful to have had the big victory on the floor just now. It was a big one, a very important one. The big news today, of course, is that we passed the budget resolution. We adopted the Senate's amendments to the resolution, holding in place all of the commitments and the instructions, the guidelines that the House originally enacted. And that was a big step, because that will allow us now to move forward to have our committees actually drafting the one big beautiful bill.
Right. So again, and everyone here in D.C. sort of knows this stuff because it's the smartest talk radio audience on the planet. But just in case you don't, in case you're listening from outside of D.C., the House passed their budget resolution bill. Senate then picks it up. Senate added amendments to it. And then it's like, oh,
Yes.
here we go. Now the House has to deal with that. And the concern was that the House was going to add another set of amendments and keep this process going back and forth. And President Trump, you know, he needs to see this happen. This is important,
yeah.
especially with the fallout from the tariff process that we just went
Absolutely.
through.
Yes.
And so the House, instead of adding amendments, they adopted what the Senate had amended. And, of course, I'm sure that there were promises secured from Johnson back to Senator Thune, the majority leader in the Senate, said, all right, fine, we'll take these amendments, but that means on the next step, we got to all be on the same page together. And now we move. So the budget amendment is passed. Now you go into committee and you start coming up with the spending plans and the tax plans that match that budget. And then you've got your reconciliation bill. And in the Senate, John Thune has the easiest time of any Senate majority ever because he just has to get 50 votes. If necessary, J.D. Vance can come in and cast that tiebreaker vote. That means he can lose 3 senators if he has to, which is, by the way, about the same as Mike Johnson has to work with. Difference is he doesn't have the benefit of J.D. Vance being the tiebreaker. They didn't need a tiebreaker, though. So that's good. Now, what did Hakeem Jeffries have to say about? Well, this is a bitter, sad, pathetic man, I have to say. Listen to his reaction yesterday to taking the big L. This is cut 2, please, Michael.
Passing this initial budget resolution should have been a slam dunk for Republicans. They had to pull the bill down off the floor last night and barely struggled to pass it today. We had 2 tragic deaths in the House Democratic Caucus. Had those deaths not occurred last month, Republicans could not have even passed the bill today. So it's going to be very difficult for them because once the committee process starts, they can no longer pretend as if they're not intending to cut Medicaid and nutritional assistance and hurt veterans.
There you go. There you go. So he's like, well, you know, we had a couple of deaths. You know, if our Democrats hadn't died, they would have never gotten it done. That's pathetic. That's actually obnoxious.
It's despicable. It's indefensible. You're using the deaths of members to say, oh, well, that's why they were able to pass it. How about the fact, and listen, you know, condolences to the members of the family members of those members who passed away. But this is not about death. It is about the fact that Democrats are unwilling to ensure that their own constituents do not see their taxes rise 22%. Listen, the corporate tax rates, I don't think, well, they may be touched, but right now those are permanent. This is about small business benefits and deductions. This is about household benefits, deductions, and tax rates. And so for Hakeem Jeffries to say, oh, you know what, it's a good thing that tax cuts almost fail, that really the status quo is that we get to keep the tax cuts we have and maybe even expand them with no income taxes on overtime and Social Security benefits. That's what you want to deny your folks. You're a sad person on a very thin limb, and it's about to break. He is viewed as weak, and this doesn't make him look any stronger.
No, it really doesn't. And they're right back to the same old talking points, too. Oh, they're going to cut Medicare. They're going to cut Social Security. They're going to please, honestly, it's like
save
1978 is calling. They want their talking points back. One other huge victory yesterday that I don't want to overlook, and this one was not as close of a vote because you had 4 Democrats crossing the aisle to vote for the SAVE Act, Safeguard American Voter Eligibility. It asks a simple proposition. If you register to vote and you claim that you're a U.S. citizen, you should prove that. That's all. Proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. That's huge. This codifies one of President Trump's executive actions to try to increase voter security and integrity in this country. The House has passed it. It's up to the Senate now. Let's see them do it. And even more importantly, let's see which Democrats in the Senate stand up and oppose and block and filibuster and talk for 48 hours straight to keep a vote from happening, to ensure that only citizens are registering to vote. And if a Democrat opposes that, well, I think it's worth voters asking them why they would oppose that. It's a winner. It's a winner for Republicans, and it's a winner to keep our
Absolutely.
election secure.
Absolutely.
It's 523.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37, and we're just getting started. Coming up at 7:05, Benham Ben Taleblu. Say that 3 times fast. I just got Hans von Spakovsky down.
I know. Our good friend Hans.
Benham Ben Taleblu covers Iranian issues for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and there's big talks about Iran this weekend. He'll join us to give us a preview. 8:05, Reagan Reese, Daily Caller, White House correspondent. And at 8:35, Jim Hansen, all-around cool Special Forces dude from the Army. And now a political commentator in the style of Kurt Schlichter, but without the class. That's all coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka. I'm very looking forward to telling my buddy Jim Hansen that I have described him as Kurt Schlichter without the class. I want to see how that ends up.
Yikes.
It's going to be an issue. Yeah, exactly.
Am I gonna have
might
to
have
separate
to
you
revise and
guys?
extend those remarks. No, there's no separation. He can kick my butt. Patrice, we got some inflation numbers yesterday, and I know this is your wheelhouse. I'm going to step back. Here's what I just want to be clear on. In the same way that the inflation was sky high in the middle of the Biden administration, it is fair to say that inflation is now down. We still have inflation, though. Everybody says, oh, inflation dropped. The inflation went. Okay, there's still inflation. It's just not backbreaking inflation. It's not the 9, almost 10% inflation we had under Biden. We had inflation, but it was at a much, 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 much lower rate. In fact, it was lower than anyone predicted. Isn't that right?
Yes. So yesterday's report actually very good news for consumers. We saw that the inflation rate year over year, which is this time compared to last year, is 2.4%, and this is lower than the month prior. So we're seeing that we're starting to see the inflation rate, which is the rate at which prices rise, really start to come down again, which is good. What's really interesting, Larry, and let me give you the headlines that we put out a statement on. Not only is the inflation rate at the lowest level in 6 months, at a 6-month low. Core inflation, which is really when you take out food and energy prices, which tend to be very volatile prices, but all the other prices, those give us a really good feel for how things are going. We saw the smallest increase in 4 years in core inflation. And on top of that, on a monthly basis, so from this month to the previous month, prices actually fell. So you're talking about deflation for the first time in nearly 5 years. This is really good. What's going on? Energy, a decrease in energy prices are really driving now what we're seeing, the beginning of deflation. So when President Trump said, drill, baby, drill, it's a combination both of a growth in domestic energy production as well as global energy production. We saw OPEC say they're going to expand their oil supply. So this is good news. We also saw, things around auto.
Can I jump
ahead.
in on real fast on energy, because a good indicator of that is airline fares. Airline fares went down 5.3%. That's almost directly linked to fuel costs. And I feel good about this because that validates one of the things that we had been interpreting from the campaign, which was, Democrats and people in the media, he's not telling you how he's going to fix inflation. No, he's telling you all the time, energy. Energy costs directly link to the cost of literally everything in this country. And so by making energy costs better and stronger, there's also another aspect of the energy cost that isn't part of this segment directly, but I think it's good to point out. Yes, it's helped with inflation numbers and brought prices down. It also cripples Vladimir Putin's ability to threaten his neighbors in Europe. If you really care about Ukraine, you should be cheering the energy production in America. That drops oil prices. That hurts Putin. Okay, go ahead. Pick it up where you were.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's a huge point. Energy is a huge driver here. We're also seeing some decrease in the shelter prices, so what we're spending on rent and homes, which is also good news. Did we in the grocery store? Yeah, we did see some kick up in a couple of areas. Eggs are continuing to see inflation, but again, not as high as it was before. So the average cost of a carton of eggs is now probably at a 6 or 7 week low, which is good news.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean, and that's because we're importing more eggs and we're reducing the regulations on domestic egg producers. It's going to take time to kick in. But, folks, here's the headline: inflation is going in the right way. And why? Because drill, baby, drill, deregulation. If we throw tax cuts in there, Larry, I think that's also going to give the businesses the kind of certainty that small businesses, the certainty that they need to continue to operate and be a buffer against what could be the impact of tariffs.
Yeah, real fast, some data points here. First of all, on eggs, eggs on Inauguration Day, January 20th, the price of a carton of eggs was $6.55 when Trump took office. Now on April 5th, average price is $2.92. That's a huge drop.
Yes.
Yesterday at the cabinet meeting, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, it's a very cool cabinet meeting where each secretary
Yes, I loved it.
laid out what has been done to help things economically or to stop waste, fraud, and abuse working with Doge. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, take a listen to this. It's cut 3, Michael.
This is national security. We have to be able to feed ourselves. And your idea of using tariffs along with deregulation and tax cuts, but your idea of using tariffs to ensure that we are putting forward and putting America first, no one understands that better than our farmers and our ranchers. But having said that, emerging from 4 years of Biden with a 30% increase in inputs for our farmers and ranchers, with an almost $50 billion trade deficit. When we left the first time, it was zero, meaning that they are hurting. So the period of uncertainty we're in, they know that your vision will move us into an age of prosperity for all Americans, but for my people, for the farmers and ranchers, unlike any they have seen before.
Yeah, and it seems to me the big headline coming out of there is over the Biden administration, costs for ranchers and farmers went up 30% over Biden. So that's going to explain a lot of the cost. They have made inroads in egg prices. By the way, as I just pointed out, by the way, that doesn't stop Whoopi Goldberg on The View yesterday, who, by the way, I'm pretty damn sure doesn't do her own grocery shopping, but she's still proliferating this myth that in some way Trump is responsible for high egg prices. Listen to this.
He did promise to lower the price of groceries. I have not seen an egg fall 1 cent since this man got in.
Well,
Right.
I guess
She
she's
hasn't
not
seen it
lying
'cause
because
she
she
doesn't do
doesn't
her own
buy
shopping.
them. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, let me reiterate: price of eggs on the day of inauguration, $6.55. As of April 5th, $2.92. I'm not a math whiz, Whoopi, but I think that's a drop, a big one. It's 5:44.
Later this morning in the Chris Plant Show, as Trump lowers the inflation rate to 2.4%, the Lizard King says Trump is throwing the economy out of kilter. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
All right, so we had a town hall last night on CNN. It was handled or moderated or whatever other word you want to use, anchored by Caitlin Collins and Jake Tapper. Boy, what a Mensa meeting that was. And on the panel were Democrats. One in particular, Jahana Hayes, had something brilliant to say with regard to one of the major legislative victories for Republicans and President Trump. You know, there haven't been a whole lot of bills that have been signed into law, but one of them was the Laken Riley Act. A very simple notion, you know, having to do with illegal alien criminals who have been apprehended that shouldn't be let loose on the streets again so that they can, you know, murder somebody's daughter. Yeah. Representative John, it's the one thing where Democrats, it's like, oh, good, they're sane, they're normal, they're rational, they're on board with something this basic. Oh, not so fast. Here's Representative Jahana Hayes speaking to that vote that she made.
Question was about due process, and since it's for people who are accused and charged with crimes but not necessarily convicted of them, what do you make of the concerns about due process?
So I understand your concerns, and I understand how immigrants across this country who are here legally and have followed the law are being terrorized right now because they are unsure of what happens next. I voted for that piece of legislation because of a very specific provision, and it was if it caused injury or death to a police officer, which was one small piece of it. There were other things about, to your point, Caitlin, someone who was was charged but hadn't been convicted. As I've thought about it over the last couple months, I probably would have voted differently. It's a vote that I regret, but coming into this Congress, I trusted that this administration, we would have some, if they wanted to have border security, they wanted to work with Democrats, that we could actually move forward. I'm not really sure of that because I've seen the rhetoric that has come out and the attacks that have been targeted towards immigrants. So I am very cautious and careful when I'm negotiating my votes moving forward.
It's notable, Congresswoman Dare, you say you regret that vote.
It is notable. That's an understatement there, Galen Collins. It is absolutely notable that she regrets voting on the Laken Riley Act, and she claims she only voted for it because of the one small provision having to do with the death or injury of a police officer. So the rest of you who don't wear a badge, your injury, your death doesn't count. Can I just reiterate, you're a naturalized citizen. You came to the country legally. When you become a guest of this country and you're given a green card and legal status, but you're still not yet a citizen, there are certain provisions that are attached to that. It's a conditional status that you've been granted. Okay, you can be here legally, you can work here, you can do a lot of things. You're not a citizen yet, but you can stay here. But it's conditional. One of those conditions is you stay out of trouble with the law. You don't do things or mix with people who are going to, have a criminal element to them. That means that if you're arrested for breaking the law, regardless of the process, everyone says, oh, we're innocent until proven guilty. That's true. But if you're a legal resident in this country and you're here under certain conditions and provisions, even if you're arrested, that is enough to deport you. That's been that way since the beginning of our immigration laws. So there's nothing new here.
Rightly so. I mean, it's so interesting. This representative, she's from Connecticut, and I think she perhaps the reason why she supported the Laken Riley Act was because she was running in a pretty contested race last time around, and so maybe she thought that would help her with independence. But yeah, listen, my family, we actually had a green card when we came to this country, but that doesn't mean that we were going to flout American laws and do whatever we wanted to do. Much more of those who have already broken the law by entering into this country illegally and then compounding that by, rape and murder. Yes, if he hasn't been convicted, but I think if a grand jury has found enough evidence that he probably did the crime, and they've certainly held that against President Trump, then why isn't that enough to hold it against somebody who's going through trials for rape and murder? These Democrats, they are just so disingenuous. And please, please, please do not lump us all together. All immigrants are not the same, and those of us who came here legally and are abiding by the laws when we came through the door. And now, for me, 30 years later, we do not want to be lumped in with criminals who are criminals from the day they entered into this country and those who continue to break the laws in other ways. Don't do it.
I just love the fact, just in terms of the politics of it, because the humanity is obvious. She's aligning herself with the rights and the horrible plight of Laken Riley's murderer. I still think most human beings on this planet would rather align themselves with the victim and the family of the victim.
Thank you.
I love the fact, though, just in terms of the politics of it, if I may, the politics of it are clear. Democrats were going to be able to run in the midterms saying, listen, we're not crazy. We voted for the Laken Riley Act. We understand certain things that we should do to lock down the immigration process in the country. They don't have that golden ticket anymore. Every single Democrat running for re-election in the midterms should be asked the question, do you agree with your colleague? Are you like Representative Hayes? Do you regret your vote for Laken Riley? Please explain how Representative Hayes is wrong about her regret here. Do you still stand by your vote? So they don't get a one-off. They don't get a free pass anymore.
Yeah.
That is, if we had a media that treated Democrats like Republicans.
Really quick, by the way, Larry, Laken Riley's killer was convicted on all 10 charges and sentenced to life just a couple of days after the election. So, this idea that he needed due process before you can vote on a bill, no, sorry. Go ahead.
554.